Hey everybody, welcome to a special edition of Ice Cave Radio. My kid's screaming in the background. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but she's screaming for joy because she is. And she's excited because we get to talk about, we get to recap sort of our 1v1 match that we did the other day. It's sort of a shortened version of ICR this week. We're gearing up for a big spoiler episode coming up in the near future, but for now, we're just going to kind of recap the best of three that, if you haven't watched it, Charmer and I randomly rolled. We spun wheels to decide what leader we're playing and what aspect we're playing it with. We built those decks, we played those matches, and now they are up and available to watch. We are going to be talking about the results of that, so if you don't want to be spoiled on it, definitely turn off the video right this second, and then come back and watch it again after you've watched the matches, because they were fun games. It went all the way to game 3. We had good times. Charmer, what are your first thoughts on those matches?
My first thought is I wish that you had forgotten to win.
I try really hard to forget to win on a daily basis, but I can't stop,
The one game you kind of did forget, and I was like, why wouldn't you just win? And then the other game, I had an opening if you had not buffed the Ray before you passed. If you just would have taken initiative, I might have had an out, but then you remembered to win. So that's my thought. I also, I enjoyed the challenge, and I don't regret anything, but I do wish that I would have had a non-cunning list for Bo.
That was a tough one.
I love Bo. Honestly, though, it was tough, but I was going to say, I do appreciate, and I will say that I learned a lot about deck building when you don't have a perfect puzzle, right? Instead of knowing exactly what your deck is going to do, I was kind of forced into thinking about like 2 or 3 card combos or things that had synergy and hoping that I could make the most of it when it became available. Spoiler, it didn't end up making it into the final list, but the other thing that I had considered doing, because again, I didn't have enough to go full kind of like Mandalorian. There was a point in time where the initial builds of my list included a lot of Wookiees, because in Cunning, you can run Chewbacca, you've got the Fugitive Wookiee, you've got the Liberated Slaves, and then you could run like Tarful.
Let the Wookiee win.
Yeah, let the Wookiee win, Tarful in the top end. And so for a bit, I was like, all right, well, if I can't go full Mando, I'll go halvesies and go the other half Wookiees. But ultimately, I didn't like the way that was playing when I was kind of like fishbowling, because everything felt so disjointed. So I trimmed it back to try to be as Mandalorian heavy as I could, and then make use of the equipment and other neat things that were available within Cunning. So, again, spoiler alert, there's not a lot, but there was a jetpack in there. But there are cards like the Hotshot Blaster, for example, that are pseudo Cunning that I was kind of able to lean on. So, I just thought it was a fun exercise.
Well, we'll dive into the deck list in depth in just a moment here, but just to sort of recap of what we ended up with is you ended up with Bo-Katan Cunning, which is, again, a daunting task. I ended up with Ray Command, and obviously Ray Command is a deck that's played out there. It's not quite as popular. It is getting more popular now, but it wasn't quite as popular as like the Ray Vigilance and the Ray Aggression lists, the Ray Aggression especially. But I have never been a Ray player. I just kind of gravitated away from that because, like, anytime someone, an expansion comes out or anything and someone's like, oh, this thing is so strong, that like repels me. I'm like, I don't want to play the strong thing. I want to figure out my own way, I've been playing a lot of Boba Fett, but new Boba Fett, not old Boba Fett. So I actually hadn't seen any Ray command lists, and I kept it that way. I didn't look at anything at all. I just tried to build the best list I could based on, what I thought would work well. So I came into it as fresh as I possibly could, at least from that side. I wanted to do it honest, so that was sort of my side of things. And I went through a couple iterations of it. We'll get into that when we look at the actual list, but I want to start with your list first. Let's check that out. So let's go to the other screen here.
I will tell you, I cheated. I looked at every meta Bo-Katan Cunning list I could find.
And there are tons out there, right?
There were so many. It was such an overload of information, a cornucopia of options. So this was what I ended up settling on. As you can see, there is essentially every red Mandalorian that I could jam in, because the entire point of the leader is that you want to attack with a Mandalorian. So we've got Sabine Wren, We've got the House Cast Soldier, which apparently was the only one I could draw. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
As I think back on our matches, I've got Sabine, who's a great 2-drop, has been since set 1, and we've got Ketsu, who is outstanding against Ray, and I couldn't find either one of them to save my life.
I was very happy that the Kitsu Onyo never hit the board, because that is a great card to drop against a Ray early on.
The one time I played, I had to sneak attack it in. That's how bad it was going. So I had those, again, kind of like middle of the road Mandalorians as well, like the Night Owl Skirmisher, which I don't think I ever played, but I had them as a smuggle option. Casca is great. Protector of the Throne was meant to be a throwaway. I do like the neutral Mandalorian quite a bit, actually.
It's not bad, really. It's good for its cost, and it throws out an XP, right? And upgrades buff a lot of Mandalorians too. So, or they unlock a lot of things with Mandalorians. So, actually, I think that's one of the better neutral cards they've printed in general.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big fan of that. And then I also had the clan challengers in there, which were, again, not something I think that I would normally run. Originally, that was Chewbacca, because I just didn't like many of my 5 drops or much of the top end options. So when this was a Wookiee package, that was Chewbacca. And then I had no Protector of the Throne because I had some other Wookiees. And so I was kind of doing a mix and match, but like I said, I ended up cutting those. So the rest of this is a bit of trying to find what I felt was the best or most useful stuff in cunning. And then also some of it, I'll just be forthright, was limitations on what I owned. So 3 Spark of Rebellion, because it turns out that card's just good. 1 Sneak Attack, because if I'm playing cunning, I always like to run 1 because it affords a lot of options to you, and because I'm also running K2SO just for the value, that's always a great finisher potentially. I was running 3 copies of the Fang Fighter, which, as you learned, is a Mandalorian as well as just being really useful.
We all know that, but this is the first time I've ever seen the Mandalorian trait actually be important. In game 1, honestly, in game 1, it was the 2 Fang Fighters that did me in. You had Casca Reeves with the Darksaber, which was also a big problem, but it was really the Fang Fighters that I just couldn't deal with. And once those things get buffed, they get scary really fast.
Yeah, so you mentioned the Darksaber in terms of equipment, and so this is one of the downsides, right? What I feel with Bo-Katan and what was my biggest limitation when I was building this is that obviously she's meant, I think, or the easiest way, I guess I'll say it that way, maybe not meant, but the easiest way to build her is red-blue, not only because you have a large number of other Mandalorians there, but because many Mandalorians care about being upgraded, and because her ability, the leader ability, does require you to attack with them. That means they also need to survive. So the thing that I was mostly missing was actually shields. So when you play Vigilance, it's not just that you have the other Mandalorians, it's also that you have stuff like the Armorer or other cards that can give you shields, which satisfy both things. They let your unit stick around to attack, and it's an upgrade, so it turns things on. I didn't have that, so I was trying to include things like Jetpack, which is the best thing I had to a shield option, and it smuggles. I was trying to include cards like the Darksaber, but I only own 2. So instead, I did a 2-2 split with that and the Vambrace flamethrowers that I also set to play against you. Yeah, I think that's a good filler. Obviously, the Darksaber is so unique in what it does that it's hard to compare, but I was kind of looking at them as 2 sides of the same coin. Darksaber makes my unit big and then buffs everything of mine, and Flamethrower hopefully kills a bunch of your stuff or does damage across. So those were kind of what I was running for equipment, because again, I didn't have a lot of stuff to give out shields. The neutral Mandalorian's the only thing giving out the experience. If I play Darksaber, obviously that gives out experience, but I was just lacking good equipment options. And then that's when I remembered Hotshot Blaster. So, I'm in aggression, I'm in cunning, so I can play it manually or I can smuggle it. So that was a 3 of once I remembered that was an option.
Yeah.
The rest was, like I said, just me trying to think about what were the good cards I could run. Spare the Target is just a good bounce, and if you happen to have something with Bounty, it's helpful. I would run that in a normal thing. I will say this, and I know you said the same thing. I didn't build my list to counter a Ray list. I tried to build it the way I would build something broadly, but it just so happens that Spare the Target I was expecting to be good against the Clone Deserter, for example. Stuff like that. Poe Dameron. I was running Poe just because Poe is really good. Like, enough said. And then I did a 1-1 split on the Millennium Falcons because I thought I owned a playset of the good Millennium Falcon, the 3-drop. Turns out I only own 2.
Really?
And
wow.
I couldn't find my other one because I had forgotten that it was in my Twin Sons deck at the time I was putting stuff together.
Oh.
So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm doing the 1-1 split. At least the other one smuggles. So yeah, that's why that's a 1-1 split. And sideboard. I was trying to build this the way I would build it against kind of like any other deck. So I wanted to include open fire for any units that I felt that were problematic, or if you were maybe going heavy space or something, because I did not have a lot of presence in space. And open fire is just a good like emergency button.
Yeah.
And my list it's not really what I would describe as an aggro list, but it's definitely lower to the ground. So if I was playing against a slow deck, or if you were going like Hyper Turtle Ray by some chance or whatever,
which you totally
to
can do in
that,
command, yeah.
Oh yeah, you absolutely can. So to counter that, I was running 3 copies of Pillage and 3 Crate Dragons in the board. Normally, I don't think I want to go to 9 resources, but on the off chance that the games are dragging, I just wanted it as an option. And then the last sideboard slot was 1 Wampa for flavor.
Yeah, I couldn't include the Wampa because it wasn't in my color palette. I mean, I guess I could have, but the truth is I didn't think about it. But next time I will. We'll have to have one sideboard slot always occupied by a Wampa. Make that a rule. So we should do this again. This was a lot of fun. But I look at this list and I feel like, you know, if I were making this kind of list, I would make it red heavy as well, since there is a lot of really good Mandalorians in red, especially Ketsuonyo is good, great in array. It's too bad it never got drawn, or it didn't get drawn early on when it should have for you. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, the Vambrace Flamethrower is really good if you can get it there and get it to stick. That starts just tearing apart the board and all that. But really, I mean, in that first game, I just got rocked because you got I had to make a choice between using Rival's Fall on Bo-Katan when she flips or Ketsuonyo. Yep. And I was like, well, I guess I should just get rid of Bo-Katan because that's the leader. She's got a little bit better stats. She's going to come out and do her ability more. And, you know, I knew there was a chance that Darksaber would go down on, Casca Reeves, but I had to kind of just like take that chance. Then, of course, he did play the Darksaber on her. And then with the 2 Fang Fighters, every time you swung the Darksaber, those Fang Fighters got +1/+1 tokens. And that I was not prepared to handle. And that just destroyed me. But it was fun to see in action. It was neat. Yeah. Well, any final thoughts about this one? We'll check out the Ray Command deck then.
Yeah, I mean, final thoughts are 1, it taught me a lot about my collection because I thought I had a playset of Darksabers and Millennium Falcons, and I was shocked. It's either that or I just can't find them, but I'm shocked to find I only have 2s. But also this, I will say, despite the fact that I felt like it was actually a really good deck building exercise and I love a good challenge, it makes me really want to try playing like a quote unquote real bow deck. Like I want to build one with Vigilance now with the shields and see how it feels, because I had a lot of fun piloting this. And I think if my units were just a little bit stickier than what they were, I would feel like even better about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because in a way she's sort of the heroism Cad Bane of this set, right? Where it's like it's a leader that if you do a kind of a tribal thing, where it's Underworld for Cad Bane, it's Mandalorian for Bo-Katan, you can do a damage to another unit. Now, obviously, Bo-Katan's got an extra hoop to jump through and that you need to attack, but the damage is directed. You can choose where it goes. Versus Cad Bane, all you have to do is play an Underworld unit, but your opponent chooses where the damage goes. So I really, shout out to Fantasy Flight for doing similar things across 2 leaders, villainy and heroism, but having them operate in a different enough way that they're both unique. Feeling and deck building. I like that a lot if you compare Cad Bane and Bo-Katan, because there's some similarities, but there's a lot of like interesting deck building and play pattern differences that emerge in these leaders too. So it's cool. Yeah. But I think that the deck put up a good fight. We did go to game 3. It was fairly close. I think it could have been a lot closer if some of those draws that you're looking for came a little bit earlier. But that is the nature of a best of 3. But we're going to do this again, so don't worry. Let's take a look at my Ray Command deck. And again, you know, I didn't want to look at any other Ray Command lists. I've still barely looked at any. I only looked at the one you sent me, which was very kind of healing heavy. I initially just had all the good blue stuff in there and was very like restore heavy. And then I'm like, I've hardly got any green stuff in here. I want to go more green. So I rebuilt the list with a big emphasis on, on ambush and doing as much as I could with as many green units and green events and things like that as I could. So I ended up going with ECL. I'm like, I can take the 5 HP deficit in exchange for all the healing that Ray does just kind of natively. You're going to have a good amount of healing stuff no matter what Ray list you build. And so I thought that was fine. I think it turned out okay. I didn't feel like any of the games I like really needed that 30 health. You know, I liked having the ambush instead, especially when you have things like the Sindari Peacekeepers to ambush out. Those are always good.
Rose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You've got the Rose especially was a really good one. You've got the raid defaults here in terms of the Moisture Farmer. The R2D2 I think is a good thing to put in a Ray because it's got such a great ability, and then just being able to put the tokens on it is nice. Clone Deserter, of course, too. So a pretty decent suite of 1-drops to then buff with Ray. Timely Intervention, again, because I wanted to sort of emphasize ambushing things if I wanted to. And then stuff like the Restored Arc 170, Corsair or Concord Dawn Interceptors. Like, you're just going to put those in the list. Those are just default, right? I initially had a Jedi package when I was much more blue, and so I had 3 Jedi lightsabers in there. When I switched to more of a green focus list, I didn't really have the Force stuff in there anymore, so the lightsabers became Electro Staffs. I don't know if that's a card I would keep in there if I kept running this list, but I do like it because it throws off your opponent's math a lot when they have to worry about -1 attack when they attack into your stuff. And it's just in a 2 for 2 buff, which isn't bad. You can stack that on top of something that's already buffed, or you can just drop it on Ray. She's going to be harder to remove then when she comes out after she buffs herself. You know, it's good. It's good, and then I went for the basic removal stuff. The 3 takedowns, the 2 rivals fall, I think are pretty stock and standard right now. A lot of people have moved away from 3 takedowns in lists, which I think is a little bit crazy because takedown's still an amazing card. Rose is great in this. My top end was very heavy because I figured I could live through the early game long enough that I didn't need to put any ramp in here, and I could just include a bunch of 7-drops. You can see the 3 Lukes is, I think, a no-brainer. Obviously, you're going to want to put that in there.
Yeah.
2 home 1s and 2 reinforcement walkers, because I wanted to. I knew with playing against like a leader like Bo-Katan in Cunning, aside from the Crate Dragon, I was pretty confident about controlling the late game if we got there, if I put this stuff in. And that did help a little bit. It was mostly Luke that closed out games. I didn't end up using much of my sideboard, except for the Take Captive, actually. That ended up, I think, being important in game 3, if I recall correctly. I was able to take Casca Reeves captive at a crucial time, and that made a big difference. Talking about not knowing your collection, I was positive that I had a playset of General Riken, but I only had 1. This is the second time it's happened. I thought I had 3 records and I only could find 1. I had to go and trade for the other 2 again. I don't know. I opened 7 boxes, but there's some rares that I'm weirdly like missing a playset of. So the 2 General Riken ended up being 1 General Riken and 1 Obi-Wan, and which is okay. A lot of Ray lists use the Obi-Wan, but again, I was trying to go as green heavy as I could. And I think General Riken has better stats than Obi-Wan does for the same cost. He also provides Sentinel. He doesn't give out the XP tokens, but that's not a big deal anyway because Rey is doing that. And at that point in the game, it's not going to make as big of a difference. So I like him over Obi-Wan, at least in this list. And you can also ECL him too, which is, something that didn't come up, but it's another great target for that. Whereas Obi-Wan with ECL isn't quite as powerful, again, because his stats just aren't as big. So I actually like really enjoyed playing this list to the point where I was like, man, I kind of want to keep iterating on this and start bringing it to locals. And like I said, I don't really know what people are running in Ray Command right now, but this felt like a fun, aggressive / going into mid-rangey kind of list. I'd probably change some stuff up in the sideboard, but yeah, I liked it. The list felt good. I think Ray's easy to pair with a lot of different aspects, so I think I got lucky in terms of rolling Ray, but at the same time, I'm glad that I ended up in an aspect that's not as common, and I got to do something that was That felt a little bit like my own, you know. But yeah, the list felt good.
Yeah, obviously I sent you my list. Mine was a little bit cheeky. For those who don't know, I have a Ray list. I technically have 2 versions. The one that I sent Doa is what I would describe as my more fun one because it's running Bale, Organa, and Maz Kanata to give you an idea of what I'm doing with that one.
A lot of tokens.
But this is very close to what I run when I want to run a more competitive list. I think that afterwards you and I had talked that like where you have Electro Staff, I was running Admiral Akbar just because I like the body with the removal. He can be buffed, has the iconic interaction with Home 1, that sort of thing. But for the most part,
good include. I would that would be one of my first changes actually. And Admiral Akbar almost made it in here, but I just really love Electro Staff. But you know, if I wanted to really be competitive, I think that'd be an easy decision to make. Yeah.
Yeah, but for the most part, this was pretty close to what I was expecting to play against because it's just really good. Ray with command. So the appeal to me versus like when you play with the blue, when you play the blue, you are definitely like hard control. If you're double blue. So I do have a double blue list of Ray that I also play, and you are playing hard control. It's all of the healing. It's drawing cards off of Kuil because the way I've got it built, you just always draw a card off Kuil.
Yeah.
It's a grinder. This can be more mid-rangey, like you said, and even more so because when you go the command route, as you rightfully pointed out, you do have access to a lot of ambush stuff, which is good in the fact that you've got the raid units, right? So again, Peacekeeper is outstanding with ambush. If it's not raid, you've got what I call like perma raid with Rose, where if you ambush with her, she just keeps the +2/+2, essentially. So that's really good. And then the other bit, especially with like Peacekeeper off of an ECL or something like that, is that you also heal. So when you think about things that are like swing plays in this game, if you can remove a unit and heal some off of your base, like all before your opponent can do anything, especially if it's a readied unit, so you're also preventing the damage it would have done to you, it's a really powerful play. So that's why, even though I have a list for the double blue and I do like to play it, I've been gravitating more toward the command version because it just has a lot of ways to win. Whereas the blue one, like I said, it's hard control. You know what you're trying to do. You're dragging the game out, and then, you know, you're going to win with some bomb or, you know, win with a Luke or whatever. You don't necessarily need to win with the Lukes or the Home 1s with this green list. You can just take value trades and get to a point where your opponent's just behind.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Like you said, where you have that top end if you need it, but you can do just a lot of like smart trading and board control. Like this list felt like I'm just playing Star Wars Unlimited straight up in a very honest way, where I am fighting on board. I'm using the keywords. I've got a few events, but it's not like super event heavy. I'm mostly playing around what are the good trades I can make. How do I keep my units alive? How does my leader ability help me keep my units alive? It feels like very straight up classic honest Star Wars Unlimited playing this list, which I like a lot. I like games where, you know, the game is focused around making good trades on board, and that makes it exciting when like you ambush in Rose Tico and she becomes a 4/8 when she defeats the shield and all that, and you have this huge character out there that they might not have been expecting and all that, and it's fun. And I mean, just Modded Cohort is just such an incredible card too. So when you look at this list, it's like you've got great ambush already with Modded Cohort, and then, you know, all of your other stuff is good with ECL, like you know, the I'm blanking on the name of the 3 costs. I can't read it. The
Village Protectors.
No, not the Village Protectors.
The Sundari Peacekeeper.
Sundari Peacekeepers. Yeah, that's right. I'm looking at it, but it's like small on my screen right now because of odds, so I can't read it.
That's fair.
I was blanking on it. It's been a long day. But that one's a great ambush target as well. Obviously, you can ambush in, and then you can use Ray ability to quote-unquote heal it and buff it a little bit. You know, you can do things like ambush something in with ECL and then play Covert Strength on it, where you're healing it and then putting a token on it. And that's okay if it pushes it out of Ray range because you're just basically ending up with another big unit, you know, after they've lost something. So, yeah, it's great. And then because of all this, because of the survivability of your board, then stuff like Take Captive is a lot harder for your opponent to deal with, because they have units that are going to be healing. They have units that have high health just natively. So I don't think I want to put Take Captive in main board, but I think it's a great sideboard card to bring in frequently, we'll say, you know. Maybe I do something like take out, you know, the reinforcement walkers and put in a Take Captive or something like that, because I don't know if I need that much top end, but it is nice to have the insurance.
I will also say there was one other card that it's in the list I sent you, but I don't think you and I had talked about it when we were kind of doing our little after game debrief. So Bright Hope is another card that I'm a big fan of in Ray, because it can be buffed by her. It's a big wall in space, and yeah, you already have the interceptors, but there are some lists that are just like really focused on space, and having the extra insurance if they're playing like a high Phantom Voltron deck, for example, can be helpful. But the other reason that I really like it is it can do a lot of really interesting things with like modded cohort. Akbar. So again, if you have Akbar in your list, Akbar as well. So when you have some of those like comes into play effects naturally on your cards, you can really make use of those as well.
Yeah.
So if you do make some of those changes, you could do the reinforcement walkers for a Take Captive, or consider something like 1 or 2 copies of Bright Hope, just because it gives you some more versatility.
This might be a list too, where maybe I go down to like 2 takedowns or something. I do love takedown, but where it's a list that controls via attacking a lot already, you're theoretically going to, you know, not need as many events for removal from hand, because you're going to be doing good on the board. So as much as I love takedown, I might consider going down to 2 or something like that. And just do, you know, take out the reinforcement walkers, take out 1 takedown, and put in 3 Bright Hope or something like that, you know. Aside from that, yeah, pretty pleased with the list overall. The games were close. I think you did a great job of making the most out of that situation and playing it well. And you know, we got to do this again. I think.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I had a lot of fun.
Me too. Yeah. Any final thoughts before we go on? It's going to be kind of a quick episode. And just to sort of, we should put this out there too. We're going to put it in Discord. But Charmer and I have a very busy couple months coming up, where I'm gone basically 3 to 4 days out of the week for the next 2 weeks, and then I've got relatives visiting the weekend after that. So it's going to be a busy September. You're doing some traveling as well, so the content may be a little bit slow over the next couple months. But
we are going to be doing our absolute best.
Yeah.
But yes, you're busy for like the next 2.5 to 3 weeks, and then right when things start to settle down for you, I am taking my family to Italy in mid-October. It's a trip that we've been planning for a long time. And then I come back for about a week, and then I go to Osaka for the Flesh and Blood World Championships. So
you might be seeing some solo content, basically, is what we're seeing. I'm not talking about Han Solo. I'm just talking about one of us. Maybe we'll find some special guests. Who knows? But yeah, we'll get content out there one way or another. And if nothing else, hanging out in the Discord is always something that we're doing. So again, if you're not in the Discord, definitely join that. But yeah, expect it to be a little bit wonky over the next couple months. But hey, that's just how it is. You know, we're doing this for fun for now. So on that note, what also is fun is checking out icecaveradio.com, checking out the merch store. We've got awesome shirts that have QR codes on them, so that if you're at your local or something, people ask, hey, where'd you get that cool shirt? Or, hey, how did you get so good at Star Wars Unlimited? You'll be like, well, I'm in this awesome Discord and I listen to this awesome podcast. Here's a QR code that'll send you there. So definitely pick up something like that, because it is fun. I've had people scanning my QR code and checking out the website and all that. Also, think about the Patreon. Obviously, you know, we do our best to fulfill all that stuff here, but the more people we have kind of doing that, the more time we can dedicate to this too. So it kind of goes hand in hand a little bit as well. But in the meantime, glad you're enjoying the content. Short one today. We just want to talk about the lists, talk about a little bit of the deck building ideas that went into it. Hopefully there's some insight there for your own deck building. We'll be back soon with a big spoiler episode. We're going to take a look at everything that's been revealed so far, and when we record that, and then kind of talk about our thoughts on it, because man, there's a lot of neat stuff coming out, looking ahead to Twilight of the Republic. So a lot of neat stuff to get excited about.
I'm already excited, man. I get a new Sabine. I finally get Asajj. Yeah. Like, this is the set for me. So
Sabine looks sick. Well, that means there's only one thing left to do, Charmer. Go ahead.
May the force be with you.